Thanks for having me, everyone. To begin with, all I wanted you to do, I know you're sitting on comfy chairs, I just want you to quickly stand up. And if you could just turn to the person on the left and the person on the right, give them a hug and say it's awesome that you're here. I'm on your right, so how you doing? All right, you can sit down then, thank you. So I think it's always a good idea when you stand in front of people to tell them where you've come from, and I can't do that without introducing my family, the Bents. They're an absolute bunch of nutters. If you get us at a party, it totally and utterly rips up, and there's all these little spatterings of strange things that happen within our family, traditions. And one of the weirder ones is my mum, every Christmas morning, we wake up, we might open a present or two, and then she brings out this big sack that's full of onesies. Owls, sharks, lions, dragons, you name it, they're all in there. And 13 of us all put the onesies on and go for a jog round her local village in Derbyshire. And we high-five and hugging anyone we meet. And running is important to me and to all my family, but much more important is kind of creating a song and dance and making people smile. But we, as a child, I was quite angelic. And, but I was dyslexic, a little bit hyperactive, and at school I was getting in a little bit of trouble, but my books were just absolutely covered in red pen. And actually my headmaster at senior school got my parents in and said, can you move Daniel to a different school because he's going to ruin our grades? And I'd go home from school feeling pretty awful, and I'd say to my dad, this is what all the other kids are doing, this is what I'm doing. And he just said to me words that shaped my whole life. Don't worry about what anyone else is doing, just be the best version of yourself. And those words formed the foundation of everything that came from that. And one example of having that confidence to stand out was when we were leaving junior school. I was 11 years old. The headmistress got us all in a line on the stage. Pupils were here. Parents were at the back, teachers down the side, and the headmistress said to us, what do you want to do when you grow up? And everyone was just regular stuff, doctors, lawyers, politicians, vets, footballers. And it came to me, and I was this super little skinny kid, and I said that I wanted to cycle around the world and raise money for charity. And I've got no idea where that idea came from, but it gives you an idea of my mindset that was conjured by my dad's words. But I didn't always follow those words. And I finished university and went into corporate finance. And corporate finance is probably about as far away from who I am as you possibly can get. And I used to cry on the train on the way to work, and I'd cry at my desk thinking, I'm 20 years old, 21 years old. I've got to be working for double the length of time I've been alive in this environment plus some. And it blew my mind that I'd been encouraged to be this unique individual, and I was being put into a box to do exactly the same as the unique individual next to me, really. And the way I handled that stress, that negativity that I was feeling was with my cycling and with my running. I was competing for Great Britain. We'd go on these camps where we would kind of climb hills on our bikes, cycle back down as fast as we can, climb the next one, cycle back down. Your legs are exhausted. And actually on one of these camps, I was cycling behind my arch rival and best mate, Stephen Bell. And I just clipped his wheel, and it pushed his bike just to the left-hand side a little bit. And these bikes are super lightweight, they're really responsive, super rigid. And he's just kind of yanked his bike back up like this to straighten it up. And unfortunately for me, it flipped my bike to the right-hand side. And on that right-hand side was a cliff face. And I remember being upside down, still attached to my bike with my pedals. And on the edge of the cliff was this singular weed. And I grabbed it with my forefinger and thumb. And every single time I talk about this, I can kind of see it in slow motion as that little weed comes out of the ground, the white roots, the little bits of dirt that flecked off it. And the next thing I know, I'm lying on the floor and I can't feel my body. I can see and I can hear, and I can hear the screams that are coming from way up. I can see the faces that are beginning to become tear-stained. And then suddenly I get a little feeling in my left toe. It slowly creeps up my leg, down my right leg, comes up into my chest, down my arms, and then suddenly it's in my vocal cords. And I look up at them, I'm like, I think I'm alive! And the irony of this situation is that when I was falling to what should have been my certain death, I was more alive than I'd been those years before working in corporate finance. And right there and then, every piece of life, I kind of drew a line. And every moment after this, I was lucky to have. And I decided to start living a new life. And the first thing I did was set off on that childhood dream to cycle around the world. I cycled from London to India, 9,000 miles, not quite round the world, and raised a lot of money for charity. And on these adventures there are incredible moments every single day. And then every 3 or 4 days, there's experiences that etch into your mind, etch into your eyes, and you will last a lifetime. And I'm going to tell you a few of those and the lessons I learned from them. And as you saw from the previous slide, these experiences led to, like Danny alluded to, being awarded being called one of the 100 happiest people in the UK. And so they're kind of little happy tips I'm going to be giving you along the way. So the first little tip is you can always take a positive in any situation. And I'm going to give you 2 situations. The first one, I'm in the Ukraine, dusk is falling, I'm just looking for something to eat, walking down the street. What I didn't see was the guy standing in the shadows with the AK-47. As I get close to him, he gets close to me and pops it right on my forehead. And you can just, every time I feel that cold barrel of that gun. He is exceptionally angry, shouting at me in Russian. I can't understand a word of it. I try and negotiate, but I can't even find any words because I'm so fearful. It's the first time I've ever seen a gun. And in my head, I start, like 90% of my brain starts devoting itself to the thought that I'm going to die. There's 9% of my brain, it's the mummy boy in me, is thinking, how are they going to get my body home to my mum? But there was this 1% of my mind which kicked in and just thought, this is going to make an awesome blog post. And with that thought, just put a tiny little smile on my face. It probably says a little bit about my mentality, but I put a smile on my face, and this Russian guy with the gun put down the gun, opened up his jacket, pulled out a bottle of vodka and 2 glasses, forced me to sit on the curb, he'd got a gun, I had to do it, and then made me drink vodka until I passed out on the pavement. And I think there's, obviously there's the beauty of there's always a positive, you can find a positive, but also never ever underestimate how powerful your smile can be. If I'd had a can of mace in my pocket or a small army round the corner, nothing would have disarmed him as well as my smile did. And a second story from that same trip, again, finding that positivity. I was just arrived in India. I'd met up with 3 people. They were all very, very sick. Projectile, deli belly, projectile vomiting at both ends. We had found some accommodation, 4 beds, 1 drop toilet, and all 3 of them are fighting for that toilet. I have to say I probably couldn't have found any positivity about what was going on in that room. But eventually they all got so tired they slowly went back to their beds, they fell asleep. And finally I could have a lie down. So I lay down, I shut my eyes, and then I just feel these things hitting my face. And I've travelled enough to no bed bugs when you feel them. And I just thought, do I switch the light on and start up that whole toilet trauma again, or do I just reach into my bag and pull out my roll mat and put it on the bed? And that's what I did. I pulled out the roll mat, put it on my bed, laid on top of it, hoping that was going to stop most of them getting onto me. But still, I lay back down and I'm feeling these things hitting me. And the worst ones, and it seemed to happen every time I was dropping off, they'd just land in your tear duct. And that is a real sure way of waking yourself up. But I'd been cycling up to 200 kilometers a day. I was pretty damn tired. I actually managed to fall asleep even in that situation. And the next morning, I woke up, needed a wee, as guys do, walked into the bathroom. There's a shard of mirror on this right-hand side, and I just kind of checked it out to make sure I was still looking gorgeous. And as I stepped past it, I realized it looked like I'd aged by about 30 years. My beard had just gone completely white. My hair, which was shaggy all over the place, had gone completely white. And as I kind of stepped forward and looked a little bit closer, I could see that my beard and my hair was completely teeming with maggots. Above my bed was a rotten beam, and they'd been dripping on me all night. And just, I know you're all cringing a little bit right now, but I'm a bit of a snorer. So again, we're in this situation. Obviously, it's not ideal, but that little part of my brain kicked in, like, what positive can I take from this? And again, it's a little bit to do with social media, and I shout to the guys there, because what an opportunity for the most viral Facebook profile picture you can get. And I shout to the guys. They were dripping from the ceiling. They were dripping from my beard, so I was trying to hold them in to try and keep maximum colour in there. And I shouted to the guys, got a picture, and just like I suspect most people here have been travelling, you kind of meet people, you part ways, and I never actually got to see that photo. But I do hope that somewhere on the internet there's a picture of me with teeming with maggots, getting its like billionth like right now. So, and this skill isn't just about those silly situations, it's about everyday things. You are, whether it's anything to do with being made redundant or whether it's to do with small situations that are happening to you, there's always a little positive you can find in those situations, a different way of looking at your experience. And if it was redundancy, like maybe that's going to lead to the next best job. Or if it's relationships, it can lead to the love of your life, for example. So there's always a positive. The second, so firstly, like that was a real solo adventure. It was just me and my bike the whole way. And I want to kind of take you now on a slightly different adventure with where people come together. And this is the Boston Marathon. It's a day when a river of colour runs through the streets of Boston. 30,000 runners from around 100 nations all merge as one, heading towards a yellow and blue finish line that's painted on the floor 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year in Boston. People from Boston are so proud of that line. And it's a celebration of human endeavor. It's a celebration of life. And I just want to put you guys into the mind of someone that's just turning the corner to see that finish line. Your thighs feel like they're full of glass. They're screaming at you. Your feet have been pounding the floor for 26.2 miles. The ache is kind of spreading up from both feet. Your buttocks have been chafing for 10 miles. But you turn that corner and you see that blue and yellow line, and you know that that suffering, all the hard work you've been putting in, has been worth it. You're going to make it. And you put your hands in the air. You acknowledge the crowd around you. That line gets closer. You decide, put a big smile on my face to try and hide the pain for that picture as you cross the finish line. And then suddenly, a loud metallic blast silences everything. 2 bombs went off at the Boston Marathon finish line on April 15th, 2013. 3 people died, one of them an 8-year-old boy, and several people had their legs blown from underneath them, tore flesh from bone. As a child, like I was saying, I was really into running. My mum and dad, really keen runners, and that passion and energy spread to me and my sisters. We even ran the London Marathon, all 5 of us as a family. Super lovely thing to do with your near family. And on that day when the Boston Marathon bombings went off, I was sat at home. I'd been for a run with my pal Kate. We were sitting there in our running shorts, drinking a cup of tea in a kitchen in Devon. And then we're listening to the radio, and then suddenly the words change. And they start talking about the bombing, about the suffering, about the death. And even though neither of us had ever been to America, we'd never been to Boston, we didn't know any of the victims, this was our community. And we decided right there and then that we were going to do something about it. We settled upon a running relay, a continuous running relay from LA on the West Coast to Boston on the East Coast. And we hoped that the American people would sign up and run the 3,300 miles in between, continuously, day and night. We broke it down into, we started simple, like, how are we going to organize it? We had no idea. My organization skills are very much similar to that of a goldfish. A great example of this is when I went to the club championships for triathlon and traveled an hour to get there, arrived, all pumped up and ready, and realized I'd forgotten to bring my bike. And not only that, I'd brought one of my size 9 shoes and one of my mum's size 5 shoes. So we didn't have all the skills needed, but we started simple, and we broke that 3,300 miles into 10-mile segments. We put it onto a website, a really simple website, and then we shared it on social media. And we worked very hard. We were working for 18 hours a day. We were trying to contact every running club, every media outlet. We were even started calling up businesses that were along the route to say, do any of your employees like running? But 3 days after sharing it on social media, we still had no one signed up. But on the 4th day, on that 4th morning, we got our first sign up. Ian Russell from Boston. He signed up, and then he sent us this message afterwards. Ian Russell reporting, ready to support and spread the word. Ian Russell was an art curator, but for us guys, yeah, he became our first marketing executive, and he started contacting people he knew. He knew Sandra in LA. She signed up. She sent us a message. I love running, here to help. She knew a guy called Paul from work who signed up, who played football with a guy, Keith, who signed up. Every single runner that signed up sent us messages saying, we're here to help. And suddenly, it wasn't just us striving on our own, we'd got a whole team doing it. And I wonder if when we had that first conversation with Ian, whether he would have believed me if I'd said that within 7 weeks of those bombings happening, we would be setting off from LA with thousands of people signed up, that we would create a community that would change hundreds of lives, that we would unite the nation, that 4 weeks after setting off from LA, we would have carried that baton continuously without stopping all the way to Boston. And much more than that, that we'd raise over $500,000 whilst doing it. Would he have believed me? Of course he wouldn't. But that is exactly what happened. And everything that happened was because we came together. We worked as a team. Everyone ran 10 miles, but together they ran across a whole nation. Every dollar that was raised was because we worked together. Every life change was because we worked together. And what I'm really here to say now is just let's stop striving as individuals. Let's reach out and start striving as a community together. Because as a community, we are infinitely more powerful than we are on our own. And I want to tell you just one story about that, about the bombings. This is Nicole Odom. She'd been running the marathon on April the 15th and had been stopped by a wall of policemen at 23.2 miles, 3 miles to go. And the policeman said there'd been an incident, the marathon's cancelled, and took her and all the other runners off to a park where they were told to wait. They had no idea what had happened. This on the right is John Odom. John Odom had flown all the way from LA to Boston to watch his beloved daughter finish her first ever marathon. He was cheering all the other runners, and unfortunately he was involved in the bomb blast. He was thrown to the ground, came to in a pool of wetness. Looking down, he saw that his legs had been blown to pieces and that the wetness he was lying in was his own blood. He died twice on the operating table. Nicole sent us a message 2 weeks into the relay and said, "We've heard about the relay and would like to get involved. I'd like to get involved." And she said, "I've got negative memories of that finish line and I want to better them." The last 26.2 miles of our relay across the States was that 26.2 miles of the Boston Marathon. The yellow and blue finish line of the marathon was our finish line. And the last leg started about 20 miles into that. And there were 1,000 people were running that final leg together. The atmosphere was huge, it was loud, it was colourful, it was more like a carnival. And we set off. The next time we stopped was to be that finish line. And at 23.2 miles, Nicole was waiting where she'd been stopped before. And we passed her the baton and she set off to complete the marathon she'd started 11 weeks previously. And kind of went quiet as we passed that baton, but as we got closer and closer to that finish line, the noise just got more and more and more. Turn that left onto Boylston Street, you can see the line. Everyone went wild. Getting closer and closer, and then 5 meters from the finish line, Nicole stopped. And she looked left, and she looked right. She looked right and she looked left. And we didn't know what was going on. And then suddenly the wall of media on the right-hand side slowly parted, and there was John Odom in his wheelchair. John Odom is her father. She is his beloved daughter. He wheeled himself out into the street. She passed him the baton and then pushed him those last 5 meters over the finish line, completing the marathon she started 11 weeks previously, completing the 3,300 relay. But much more than that, for John, he was reclaiming that finish line as his own and replacing some of those negative memories with better ones. And as John went across that finish line, everyone's eyes were just full of tears. And he looked up at me. John, strong to the end, was the only person not crying. And he looked up at me and said, "Danny, this is when I start to heal." And those words to me they're forever in my ears. They are my strength when times are hard. And just knowing that we changed one life that day, it's worth it. But we didn't just change one life. We changed the lives of hundreds of people that were involved in the relay, and it changed my life. And I suddenly realized this power of community, the power of coming together, the power of striving for a common goal. Us being infinitely more powerful together than we are as a sum of our parts. And even last year we were working with Sadiq Khan's team to create a 4,000-mile relay around London, the London Relay. It was to break down gang culture that had us in our grips kind of around July last year. And all of London turned out for it. We had CEOs, we had builders, we had Somali women, we had Bangladeshi men, we had homeless people, we had refugees, and we had gang members take part. And we all united over our baton. And we raised $50,000 for charity as well. And then I was having a conversation actually the other day with a friend, and we were wondering whether you could send a baton all the way around the world, 18,000 miles, powered by this amazing running community. And rather than uniting people within a city or uniting a nation, we look about crossing borders and uniting different nationalities, different nations. And I imagine an Israeli passing to a Palestinian or a Ukrainian passing to a Russian, coming together rather than pulling apart. And I know it's a huge idea, but if history has taught me anything, it's that together we can create anything we want. And last little story is coming back from Boston. Having this amazing community around me, I wanted something like that in London, so I set up Project Awesome. Anyone heard of Project Awesome? Barring Danny? Yeah, Project Awesome is a free fitness movement. It's at 6:30 in the mornings, Monday, Wednesday, Friday in London. It's super colourful, super loud, a little bit obnoxious, but it echoes my dad's words, be yourself. People don't come to work out, they come to be themselves, to have this opportunity 1 hour every Monday, Wednesday, Friday to be really true to themselves. And it's just almost an added bonus that they get super fit. And it's, Project Awesome is my tribe, and we're all looking for tribes. And because there's not been enough time in evolution since we were tribes people for us to get used to being like this the whole time, or shut up in our rooms or in a box. We all crave to be loved by the people around us, to be understood by the people around us, to be supported by the people around us. And that's what Project Awesome provides. It's no surprise that it's being popular. And I just want to tell you a couple of stories from that. The first would be the great stories that come from it, because the real magic happens when we go to the coffee shop afterwards and we're sitting around with our endorphins flowing. We've achieved emotionally, physically already. And there was this one guy, he'd come for his first time, and he kind of opened up and said he's always had this dream to kayak down the Amazon. Another newbie there was just like, oh, that sounds like a cool idea. And 2 months after that, they stopped coming to Project Awesome, which is a little bit sad. But 6 months after that, they came back and they told us about having kayaked down the Amazon. These are the things that happen when you surround yourself with hugely positive people that support your ideas rather than finding the reason they're going to fail. And we were actually talking before the talk about if you surround yourself with 7 negative people, you become the 8th negative person. If you surround yourself with positive people, you become the 8th positive person. So there's a little bit of responsibility in choosing who it is you're hanging around with. I just want to tell you one more story. There was a girl who came. She actually just turned up because she heard that we chant about unicorns and rainbows and pixie dust. And she turned up and she came to listen, and we persuaded her to come and walk the hill that we were going to be running. And we were high-fiving her on the way and everything like this. And she messaged me the next day and said it felt like she'd been in a car accident. Her body hurt so much from doing this physical exercise. But it didn't put her off, and she came back next week. She walked the same hill. Next day, she contacted me and said, it doesn't quite hurt as much, but it still hurts quite a lot. The third week she came, she contacted me afterwards and said, oh, it didn't hurt this morning, so I went out for a walk on my own. And if we fast forward 18 months from there, this same girl, who had never ever done PE at school, never done any sports as an adult, went out to Rome. She had a beautiful holiday, seeing the Colosseum and all those lovely things. And she turned round, she put her backpack on, and she ran all the way home again, 1,300 miles. She now blogs for the Huffington Post on running. Her life was turned completely upside down by this positive community. She's probably that's my proudest kind of achievement of Project Awesome. Her love life, her social life, the way she looked at herself, everything changed. And so, we're already doing this. I suspect people of Google are doing great in terms of community because there's so much put on for you. And it's like we have this responsibility. You can always find these communities if you Google it. You can always find whatever it is. There's other people that are wanting to do what you want to do. And if you don't find it, then you have a responsibility to put that on because there's other people that are searching that, wanting to find it. There's a responsibility on your shoulders. Cool. So, I want to just play a really small little game with you guys. And let's split us down where the cameras are. You're the left team. You're the right team. And you've been listening. Now let's make a little bit of noise. We're going to play a game. It's called Paper, Scissors, Stone. Who's heard of it? Yeah. Anyone not heard of it? Good. I'll explain how we're going to do it. You're going to find someone to compete with, maybe the person next to you, and we're going to go like this. 1, 2, 3, go. Everyone listening? People quite often get this wrong. You'd be surprised. 1, 2, 3, go. And before you do that, though, you have to get that person's name. Because if they beat you, you become their cheerleader. And as they're going to find someone else who's also won one game and has a cheerleader. And you're going to do battle. And if you beat them and their cheerleaders become your cheerleaders. Does that make sense? And we should just get down to one person on the left-hand side and one person on the right-hand side. And then we're going to come up and we're going to have a battle at the front. But as a cheerleader, you have responsibilities. I want you to cheer as loud as you possibly can. I want you to be as raucous as you possibly can. Let's make people feel like legends. Can we do that? Yeah, we can shout really loud. Great, let's go. Yeah, I think you should stand up because it's a bit more energizing. Oh, I'm glad you've lost because you were the loudest person out of everyone when I said that, so great news. All right, okay, grab your seats again, people, grab your seats. Just the champions, just stay up. Christy, yeah? Christy?
Yes.
What's your name?
Steve.
So we've got champion of the left-hand side is Christy.
Yeah!
Steve. Champion of the right-hand side is Steve. Yeah! Christy. Yeah! Steve. Yeah! Oh man, Steve is way more popular. Come on the left-hand side. That's more like it. So we're going. This is the great championship. It's the final. So we're going to do best of 3. Okay?
Okay.
Golly, what do we
Ready?
do for strategy?
So we do 3 rounds.
Yeah, we're going to do best of 3.
Okay.
Best of 3.
So 1, 2, 3, go.
Right.
Okay. So 1, 2, 3.
Go on,
So
Steve.
he wins.
Yeah, Steve's win. That's 1 for Steve.
1-0.
And again.
Okay, ready?
1, 2, 3.
Oh, Christy! 1 each.
1-1.
Okay.
Okay, so silence, crowd, because this is very, very serious right now.
Okay.
All right, ready?
1, 2, 3.
Oh, Christy! You are the winner! Well done, Christy. So, I wrote a book about cycling to India, wrote a book about the run across America, and I didn't actually mention that in the talk, which is strange, because this is such a strange thing for that 7-year-old who was asked by his headmaster to leave the school because his grades weren't going to be good enough. To now this book went on to sell 120,000 copies, is the bestseller, and started winning awards. And as soon as that happened, I have to say, my dad phoned Mr. Baker and just told him to let him know. So I'm going to give you both of those, but you can keep one and give one to a stranger.
Okay.
who you don't know.
Should I give that one to you?
Yeah, it's good. Wonderful. Pleasure. So, you know, when you do this, especially when we first start, it's a little bit kind of, the atmosphere is a little bit quiet, then it slowly raises up, and suddenly, like, everyone's got smiles on their faces. The energy in the room is palpable. Like, what do you think is happening? Because rock, paper, scissors is a pretty boring game. What's happening in the room when that's happening? Any suggestions? Great. Finding your tribe. And left-hand side, right-hand side, super awesome. Any other points? Excitement, yeah, cool. Community, yeah, super duper, yeah, tribes. But we're also like, I really love the way you lose, and it's actually like the people who come up here, it's the worst. That's the worst thing. It's the people who lose that get the benefit of like going wild and cheering. And so there's that kind of finding a little bit of positivity in the fact that you know, you could sulk, you could just sit back down in your seat and like, I'm not playing anymore, you beat me. But you're not, you're getting involved and you're cheering someone on as well. You're being good to people. Happiness is all within you. It's the way you see the world. It's the way you go about your life. There's 1,000 different ways to view your current situation. And if you want to, you can choose a happy one. And I just want to leave you with one quote, the most important thing you're going to hear all day, and that is, "To be you," by my dad. Thanks very much. And if you do have any questions, I am absolutely free to answer them, but you have to wait for Danny, if there are any, with the big gizmo thing. Don't worry, it's not going to kill you. Any questions, anyone? Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Who ran the first leg in LA or from LA?
So that lady, Sandra Lockridge, who was the second person to sign up, who wrote to us saying, "I love running. I'm here to help." She was one of many, but we had probably 150 people sign up to that leg alone. And but the thing I loved most was because I wasn't really sure, because I'm an English person going into America, and it's their crisis really, it's their pain. And I didn't want to really step on anyone's toes. But as soon as I saw people had actually shown up, she was the first person to show up as well. And I just kind of couldn't help myself, just ran up to her and put my arms around her and gave her this massive hug. Yeah, so that became the theme of the relay. Like everyone, whenever they met up, they gave each other these huge, massive, loving hugs, which was amazing. Any other questions? Yeah?
I was just going to ask what's next. Are you still working on, or like repeating these projects, or do you do new things all the time?
Yeah, so Project Awesome, still carrying on. I actually live back up in Sheffield now, but it's been taken on by the tribe, and they run it all themselves. And the relays in July, we're going to be running for 30 days continuously again, hopefully raising more money for the running charity, which help people, mostly youths who have found themselves homeless. And then there's so many other things happening. I had this idea that I've always had this idea that I wanted to run across Iceland. It kind of sounded really epic, and those landscapes are just unbelievable. And I kind of put it out on Facebook, just kind of ask a few questions. And so many people replied saying they wanted to take part. They'd love to do this. We decided we were going to try and invite everyone over, because you do things on your own, and those memories are just your own. No one will fully understand what you went through. But if you can do it together, then you forever got friends to actually share these moments with. And so we're hoping to get 60 people, a nomadic migration from the north of Iceland to the south of Iceland. And that's in September. And I'm doing a bit of work with the TV we're taking some youth offenders out to the Arctic and doing some resilience training as well. So it's all really super exciting. If you ever have any ideas, I just love ideas. And you hear about some of them, that have been successful. You don't hear about all the ones that have absolutely slumped and been absolutely rubbish. But, there's never an idea that you shouldn't just kind of at least take the first steps forward in actualizing it. Yep.
So I was first bit I was wondering like what happened after you fell on the ground. Were you like okay? But then my other question for you was, like that's it's quite, as you say, like the positive of that is that it did kind of just completely strike you out of your normal life, because obviously it was such a huge thing to happen. It kind of did just make you think completely differently about what's really important to me and what really makes me happy. Like, without us all kind of throwing ourselves off the side of a cliff, have you got any sort of thoughts about how someone might kind of jolt themselves out of kind of their routine and maybe take like that step or that risk or that go on that adventure if they're feeling a little bit like, this just kind of, day-to-day working sort of stuff?
Great question. Really like it. Should we start with the injuries first? So I was super lucky in that at the bottom of the cliff were just jagged rocks. But there was one bush and I landed in the bush and it pierced both my buttocks, and the bike chain landed on my leg and cut through my leg like a chainsaw. But really, I was still alive, and that was just unbelievable. And it didn't take me too long until I was back on the bike and all that sort of stuff again. Sitting down was a pain for a few days though. And then how can you, that's one of the reasons I really love giving these talks. If I can just plant a tiny seed, give someone a kick up a butt, be the catalyst for just the tiniest piece of change, because it hasn't happened overnight that I've had the confidence to go and just attempt things. It's all small things. You just step past the first barrier, whatever that fear is. As we walk in, how often are you guys hugging each other and doing silly things like paper, scissors, stone? Not very often. So you've already stepped across one barrier, and as far as I know, no one's died. And so let that be a lesson that, there's these barriers in my life, you can just step past them. And you can kind of slowly up those steps until all of these crazy fears that we have, like every experience we have in life is kind of stored up here. There's so many voices talking to us, and the strongest ones are generally the most negative. And those voices generally stop us experiencing life in its absolute fullest. You're always up here rather than out there. And that is true for like just being in nature and enjoying yourself, or in a conversation, like more importantly in a conversation. Whether I'm in a conversation and I'm thinking, is that guy looking at my spot? He's looking at my spot. Oh God, he's looking at my spot. And what an arrogant thing to think that he's actually thinking about me. Because he's thinking, oh God, have I got something in my beard? Oh no, he thinks I'm disgusting. Don't be arrogant to think that anyone's thinking about you. We're all thinking about ourselves. So when you're in these conversations, you may as well just tell those words to shut up and just listen fully to the people around you. And that experience, it. When you come across people that are having a full, open, honest conversation with you, it's so stands out so much from normal conversation. I'm probably waffling right now. What was the question again?
No, I think you answered it. I was just saying, how do you jolt for people that don't have the experience of basically near death?
Yeah, exactly.
How do you jolt yourself out of your day to day to kind of achieve interesting things and go on fun adventures?
Yeah, it's exactly that. I wouldn't advise you all to go to the Alps and throw yourself off a cliff, because you're never going to be as lucky as I was. And so, yeah, it's just those baby steps. And eventually it gives you confidence. And now I find myself in this situation where if I feel fear, and I know it's irrational, obviously some amount of fear is good, otherwise life wouldn't last that long. But if I feel one of these things and I know, I can feel it, it's an irrational one, I actually want to go and do it. And so one of my, a good example of this is on a friend's birthday, Kate's birthday actually. Probably her 30th or something like this. And I thought, let's go and do some life drawing. We'll take some champagne. We went to do life drawing. Everyone was really nervous. Everyone had dinner around my house first. They were saying how nervous they were to be drawing in front of other people. And we went, and the champagne was great, and that kind of just loosened everyone up. But I came out of there, everyone else came out nicely relaxed, like, wow, that was cool. And I came out of there caving in on myself because I thought, what's it like to be that person sitting there in the nude being drawn? And as I walked out, I just took the card of the person organising it and I wrote to her and said, well, how do I become one of those people? Because I just wanted to overcome it. And 2 weeks later, I was stood there in a dressing gown. I'd been so nervous all day, just worrying what could happen and all the normal worries that any man has. And she said, okay, Dan, now you can drop the towel, go into your first pose. And pulling that dressing gown off me was literally like tearing steel. It was just, ah! And then you do a pose, and everyone, you know, in your situation like this where people are all watching you, and they're just like, like there was no whooping, there was no cheering. I was so put out. But yes, but I overcame it. And again, literally nothing happened. So yes, but that's my stupid brain. Long question, long answer. That's how it rolls around here, people. Any others? Yeah.
Did you have any conversations with the man with the AK-47, or maybe in a sign language because you didn't know each other's language?
No.
Nothing at all?
I mean, I guess I don't know what the stat is, but it's something like only 20% of communication is through your mouth. So I guess there was other conversations going on with our bodies. Mine was mainly being extremely nervous and his was being extremely aggressive. But I think, well, we would have chinked glasses and things like this. But it was a massively surreal moment, really strange. But it just went from aggressive to friendship, 1 second. Unbelievable.
Danny, I'm actually a trustee of the running charity.
Are you?
Yeah.
Did you know it? Did you know that? Yeah, you knew that.
Yes, I did
great.
know that. Yeah. I just wanted to say we've got a Google team signed up for the relay. And if anyone else here would like information about the relay, I'd be happy to send it on. And it's taking place throughout July.
Yeah, throughout the whole of July.
Yeah.
I mean, you can go to londonrelay.com.
Yep, there you go.
And search the Google team as well, because there's all sorts of different teams in there. Wicked.
Any more questions?
Was there one?
I just wanted to ask how long it took altogether, the relay from LA to Boston.
So LA to Boston was just under 4 weeks. Yeah, but that was running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we tried to do the first week, myself and Kate, in this car that got nicknamed the Stinkmobile, because we were in it 24 hours a day. We slept in it. And but we only slept for 2 hours a night for the first week, which I wouldn't advise to anyone. And that was just in the car. And it got to a stage where literally we get to a traffic lights and I'd fall asleep at the wheel, and then we were like, we should probably get a hotel now. And the trucks behind us honking would be, oh, it's time to wake up and go. But yeah.
Great.
Yeah, super good.
Any more questions?
Guys, it's been such an absolute pleasure chatting to you. Great questions, great vibes. Thank you very much.